Prayer will be offered this morning by the good delegate from Montgomery County.
Good morning. On today, January the 27th, I'm reminded of a quote from Eli Wiesel, which says, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." Let us pray. As we passionately deliberate on legislation that highlights our differences, we pray that we can celebrate our differences as our Maker's great gift to the human family, that we can respect and understand one another better, and that together we can defend the principles of freedom, love, tolerance, justice, and peace. Grant us the strength to protect and safeguard those who differ the most from us. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, January the 20th, 2022.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much speaks consideration of the journal.
So ordered, petitions, memorials, and other papers. Consent calendar of introductory House bills, number 15. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 461, Delegate Rogers, Ways and Means.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much we consider the readings of House Bill 461 through House Bill 510.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Consent calendar of introductory House bills, number 16. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 511, Delegate B. Barnes, Appropriations.
Recognizing Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much we consider the reading of House Bills 511 through 543.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committee. The clerk will read the bond initiatives and the committee assignment.
Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 2, January 21st, 2022, referred to Appropriations.
Special order calendar number 1, recognizing the maker of the motion.
Read the bill.
Will the Minority Leader please come to his seat?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you may be aware, there's been a little bit of a delay or a problem with the amendments that had been requested approximately a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We'd like to, in the spirit of trying to move the day along, given the circumstances, we'd like to go ahead and do the best we can in this session to offer the amendment that had been drafted. I would like to defer because of the problem with how it has been drafted. It's actually been drafted in the name of my colleague from Carroll County, so I would defer for the special order for her to rise and begin the debate on that amendment.
Hold on, the clerk will read the bill.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, Legislative Districting Plan of 2022, favor report adopted.
Gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
In lieu of the mix-up with DLS of an amendment that was requested several weeks ago, I'm not sure how to proceed, but I'm going to proceed with some questions for whoever's leading the debate on the floor on this.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This is really an important issue, and I hope we have everyone's attention so we can hear. Thank you. This is a really important thing that this body comes together every 10 years. Most people haven't been here for this in the past. So I just want to get everybody on the same page as what has occurred and what we're doing here. So the first thing I want to ask is, I know you were on the commission or the committee, I call it the LRAC, the Legislative Advisory Redistricting Committee, and you were on that committee. And I would like you just to explain the process that you guys used for establishing the advisory commission, why the advisory commission was created, and the work product that has resulted in recommending this map.
Sure. So within my lifetime, at least, and probably farther back, maps have been drawn as a result of a citizen engagement process led by a commission. This year, that commission was the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission, which consisted of the Speaker, the President of the Senate, the Minority Leader in both chambers, and myself, and the Senate President Pro Tem. And we undertook a process of public input. We had meetings across the state where we received testimony from citizens of the state regarding what they'd like to see about both sets of maps. And these maps are based on that input from the citizens of the state.
Thank you very much. In the past, to the best of your knowledge, who is the one that appointed the commission, and where did the maps come from?
I have not been involved in previous redistricting, so I don't know the answer.
Well, I think a little historical knowledge, if you just read back, it's generally the governor that appoints the commission and presents a map, and then the legislature replaces. I've been here, for redistricting too long. Anyway, so in general, would you say, I guess if you read the Constitution, if you read past history, it's generally been the governor of the state of Maryland that's presented the maps. That doesn't mean he gets his way, but that means that it's his commission appointed, generally.
Again, I'm not aware of that.
Well, for the record, I believe that's the case. So, is it fair to say that all of the members of the LRAC were elected officials whose electoral futures may be determined by this map that they were drawing?
It is fair to say that all the members of the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Committee were elected by the people of Maryland at a free and fair election.
But that didn't answer my question. The question was, whose electoral future could be impacted by this map?
It is fair to say that the legislators on the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Committee were elected by the people of Maryland, who maintained the sovereignty over decisions of the state in a free and fair election.
I understand that, but obviously there's 141 of us that are elected, and only a handful of those were on that commission. Wasn't all 141, but
which is why this plan is now before the whole body
Gotcha.
Here today.
Okay, just trying to get it on the record. As a result of this, the commission's outreach for public comment, I know you went around the state. What direction or parameters did the commission actually give to the persons that were actually drawing the map, who were sitting in front of the computer, drawing the map? Because what parameters were there, and is there any documentation of that work?
The primary parameters for drawing a legislative districting map are determined not by us as legislators, but by the people of the state as embodied in the Constitution of the state of Maryland. There are certain constitutional principles we need to meet, and those include, among other things, trying to ensure that we minimize the number of crossings of county and municipal boundaries, that we ensure that certain parts of the state, particularly smaller counties that might not otherwise have representation, have an opportunity to elect their own resident legislators. So those rules are largely laid out by the Constitution, and we adhered to the Constitution.
And would you agree that in the past, those rules were in place in the past, nothing has changed, but in the past, Maryland was considered the most gerrymandered state in the Union, and we also, a lot of those violations we think we were in violation many, many times of crossing unnecessary borders. Can you at least agree that in the past that necessarily has not been the case?
Let me defer to the gentleman from Charles County, who I believe can review some of the history of the maps as they currently exist.
Well, and if you don't want to make this conversation longer, I'm just asking you to agree that in the past we've had crossings, we've had many things, because I think in some of the discussion of your commission you said we've made it better. So I think that's an agreement that it wasn't always exactly the way it should have been. Without a long explanation of the history of the maps. Would you agree to that, that we have in the past not necessarily followed compactness and political boundaries and those types of things?
I would definitely agree. In the history of this state, we have most likely done that more than once.
Okay, so we have a constitution in place, there are rules, and the question is how much are we following those rules? So I'm just talking about the process, and I was talking about the documentation of the work. You know, you guys had these 10 meetings, you went around the state, and I asked you who actually put the pen to the paper and had the direction from you clearly on what the priorities of this commission were based on that input. So can you tell me who else was involved in the process? And again, who did the 7 of you sit around the computer, or did you all give any direction to these people, or did you just have the meetings and then they went and did their thing? Just describe
Staff
that.
from the Department of Legislative Services and the General Assembly.
Say that again.
Staff from the Department of Legislative Services and the General Assembly were the ones who were actually putting pen to paper.
Okay, so you're basically saying, and I've looked online and I saw your report, and it's 2 maps and a couple pages of text, and there's no real direction or deliberative action that I can see that is online. So you're saying there was no real report issued, or there was no direction issued or discussion of the LRAC's priorities?
No, that's not
Okay.
what I'm saying.
So was there some kind of document or discussion that's not online that has?
In public meetings throughout this process, this question has been asked repeatedly. It's been answered repeatedly by the chairman of the commission, right? We adhered to the Constitution, and one of the principles that we adopted, because it's important, is the adherence to communities of interest. Now, as the chairman pointed out repeatedly in response to questions on this topic, if you completely redraw legislative districts from scratch, you are effectively violating that community of interest rule. Because for, in some cases, generations, people have been in the same legislative district, the voters in that district should have the right to determine whether you or me or any member of this chamber should continue to represent them. And if you start from scratch and ignore all of the history, then what you're doing in effect is violating dozens of communities of interest across the state that are embodied in the lines of our legislative districts.
All right, so you believe that our communities of interest are determined by our legislative bodies. In my county, it's by our county, it's by our high school districts, and by our towns. So we have a different, I guess, just different idea of what I don't think very many people in my district determine their community of interest by their legislative district, but we come from different parts of the state, and that could be a difference that we have. So we just have to agree to disagree. I mean, to me, it's my county, my towns, my high school district. That's what's a community of interest in my district for us. It's not who represents us necessarily. But
again, I would ask you not to put words in my mouth and to characterize what I'm saying as something other than what I'm saying, right? Again, we used a number of factors in drawing these maps. The main factors were rooted in the Constitution. The concept of communities of interest is a broad concept that includes things like municipalities and counties, hence the constitutional requirement that we respect those. I did not say that the only factor that matters is the existing districts.
Okay.
I said that should be taken into
all right,
account.
and I'm just sort of repeating some of the discussion that we had on congressional districts, and you stood on the floor and said that counties really weren't communities of interest anymore because people travel outside the county. And I don't want to get into that.
Again,
You did
that
state it
is
on the
not
House floor.
something I said at any point during the congressional debate. What I said was that the rules for drawing congressional boundaries and legislative boundaries are different. And Maryland's Constitution does require, as approved by the people of the state of Maryland, that we have to respect as much as possible county and municipal boundaries.
Okay, let's move on. So in the LRAC map, there are some 1, 2, and 3 member districts, and I guess the question I have is what criteria was used to determine what was a 1, what was a 2, and what was a 3?
So the main criteria is adherence to that communities of interest rule under the crossing of boundaries. So the default in the Maryland Constitution is for a 3-member district. That is the constitutional default. The 1 and 2 member districts have been created over time as a way to ensure that counties and municipalities or areas, communities of interest that might not otherwise have adequate representation have a chance to elect their own members. So for example, the gentleman behind you represents Garrett County and has honorably for many, many years. Arguably, in a 3-member district, it would be difficult for Garrett County to elect their own resident delegate to the General Assembly. So over time, we've created these 1 and 2 member districts to ensure particularly that smaller communities of interest have a voice in the process. But the constitutional default is 2 3-member districts.
Okay, and I just would like to use my own county as an example, Carroll County. So in Carroll County, currently in the LRAC map, we have a single-member district and we have a three-member district. So the people in Hampstead will have one legislator and one vote, and the people in the rest of the county in Westminster and Sykesville and all those other areas, they're going to have a big three-member delegation with three people they can elect. So how come in Carroll County we had enough for four? Why was it determined that we'd have a single and a large one versus four single-member districts? How was
Because
that
we
determined?
need to ensure that the people of Carroll County have adequate representation in the state legislature. We have a three-member district in much of the county, and that is, again, the constitutional default. That one-member district was drawn because if it had not been drawn, the three-member district that it's a part of would have almost certainly overwhelmingly been made up of voters from Baltimore County, and that portion of Carroll County would not have an opportunity to elect a resident Carroll County delegate. As a result of us drawing that single-member district, whose border with the rest of that legislative district is the county line, Carroll County will go from 3 resident delegates to 4, which is in keeping with the population of Carroll County.
We appreciate that, but you talked about deferring to what their representative wanted. When you represented that on the commission for your county, and I'm appreciative of that. But in our county, we didn't have a representative on the LRAC, and in our county, in Carroll County, our people want individual representation. We testified on the governor's commission to that fact unanimously. Our entire delegation wanted the single-member districts. The commission that we thought was the commission that we were supposed to testify, that's what we as the legislators that represent our district wanted for our county, because we don't think it's fair that someone in Sykesville gets 3 votes and has 3 representatives and the ones in this area only have 1 vote. But I'm just asking because in our district, in our county, that's what our legislators wanted and our people wanted in our county. So I just want to make that.
I appreciate that. Again, the constitutional default is to 3-member districts. If you or other members of the Carroll County delegation would like for that to change, then there is a process for that. It requires an amendment to the Constitution of the state of Maryland that would be voted on by the people of Maryland, because we give the people of Maryland the ability to change the Constitution. Not the governor, not us alone. The people of Maryland have the ability to change the Constitution.
But we also,
and for us to change the Constitution, to abandon the principle of 3-member districts, without consulting the people of Maryland would be a violation of our constitutional oath.
I don't necessarily read the Constitution that way, but we'll move on. Because I look at the maps, and I'm just talking about my county because that's what I look at, but I notice there's 1s, 2s, and 3s, and because there's no report to explain how you got to, there's 2 here, and there's 1 here, and there's 3 there, I would argue that it's hard for you to defend the map when you have no parameters that we can read about to defend it. When I read the commission's report, the Citizens Commission report, that was the Citizens Commission that was appointed by the governor, you can clearly tell how they came up with the parameters of what they proposed, and it explains it. And from what you're telling me, I can't understand how sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's 2, and sometimes there's 3. It seems to me arbitrary or random. And if all your cards were on the table and there was a report that I could read that you could, and it was transparent, the parameters could be defended, I think, and you would be able to explain it a little better than I just had. So, I mean, I don't think that the citizens of Maryland appreciate any kind of, they like transparency, they like to see what arrangements they are, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or unaffiliated. They just want to understand how you came up with it, and that's what I'm trying to get to. So go back to the first LRAC map. I know you all had meetings, attend meetings, but when you had these meetings, was there a map for people to comment on at the meetings?
I'm happy to answer your question in a moment, but it seems like there's a lot of debate happening, and we don't have a motion ahead of us. If you have an amendment, I'd suggest you go ahead and offer the amendment so we can debate the amendment.
No, I'm asking questions about the map so we can set a floor for what the LRAC did. I think it's important that we all understand it, and I think it's appropriate to be able to ask questions about a bill in front of us, a legislative. So I'm trying to figure out.
It is appropriate to ask questions, but I would remind you that the rules of this House exist for a reason. And one of the reasons is that in order to avoid partisan rancor or any type of rancor, these types of discussions, which end up being person-to-person debates, are avoided. It's why under the rules and under basic rules of parliamentary procedure, we're all supposed to address argumentation to the speaker. So again, if you have questions, just questions, I'm happy to answer them. But if you want to have debate, that's something that would more appropriately be done.
I've got a question. When was the first, the question I just asked you, when you went to these 10 meetings, did you have a map that people were commenting on at the meetings?
So we developed the map So we had a series of community meetings to seek preliminary input from the people of the state of Maryland. Then the map was developed, released publicly so that people could take a look at the map. We took additional comment. Changes were made to the map as a result of that public comment, and then that map was recommended to the legislature. And then again, we had another opportunity for public input at the public hearing that the Rules Committee conducted on the map. So we had multiple opportunities for public input after the publication of the map and before the publication of the map.
You didn't answer my question. It's a simple question. After the 10 meeting, I mean, during the 10 meetings that you went around the state, was there a map for the people to look at, to comment on, yes or no?
I just answered your question.
No,
Yes, there was a map available for people to look at before the final.
That was not my question. The question was when you went out to the 10 meetings, was there a map or not?
I've answered your question.
Okay, I don't think you have, but that's okay. The first LRAC map that I saw online, when was that posted? The first map that we ever saw, the public could see on the website.
I don't recall the exact date.
It's the end of November. The end of November. Supposedly it was posted.
Again, if you know the answer to the question, why are you asking?
Because I'd like it to be public.
I got you, but that's something we can cover during debate on the amendment.
It is a question I'm trying to get some verification of. The map came out at the end of November, and we could not get availability on the website because we complained about it until December. So if you don't think that's accurate, we can go back and fact check it, but I think it's accurate because we were sort of complaining that we didn't have a map to look at. So during the, so it seems like during your 10-site tour, there was no map to comment on. So after the map was made public, what changes were made to the map after it was public in comparison to what we have in front of us today?
So in response to public comment, we made a number of changes. One of them was the drawing of a new single-member district in Baltimore County to recognize a community of interest around Owings Mills. Another was adjustment to the boundaries of districts in Hartford County to better recognize the division of southern and northern Hartford County. So we changed the map as a result of public input.
Okay, so based on our discussion that we just had, is it fair to say, would you agree that during the map process, and we had congressional and legislative, there was a product that you put on the website, which are 2 maps and a couple pages of the data, and there was no other report to explain the process, no public discussion of the parameters, that was not available to the public. Is that fair to say? If it's not, then where is it?
We released a map publicly.
Okay.
The public had an opportunity to comment. The public testimony resulted in changes to the map.
So there was no minutes, no video meetings, no apparent discussion of priorities or discussion of how the maps would comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act or the state constitution. There was nothing, there's no documentation of that.
In fact, again, at the beginning of these public meetings, we had legislative staff who went over the outlines of the proposed map that the public was there to comment on and talked about it. And again, there were questions repeatedly asked of the committee about what they were using as priorities. And again, as I've said before, the answer is constitutional principles and then adherence to communities of interest.
No, and I think that's great, but it'd be nice.
Does the gentlelady have an amendment she's going to offer?
No, I'm asking some more. I'm asking some questions.
Do you
Okay.
have an amendment that you're going to offer?
I do, but I just have a couple more questions.
Please offer the amendment.
You just want it on the floor? Okay, let me put my glasses on. Hang on, so I can read the number. I offer amendment number 213827/1.
Amendment number 1.
So be considered the reading of the amendment. Just a couple more questions. Did those who were drawing the maps take into consideration the place of residence of incumbent office holders or any potential candidates or the party affiliations of the voters? Do you know if that was available on the map making?
The maps the commission looked at did not have any data about the places of residence.
I'd ask about the people drawing the maps on the computer. I read the other commission's report, and they clearly said that they did not take that into consideration or even have that information. My question is, did your map makers have that information on their computer? Did you tell them not to consider those things, or was that not talked about?
It wasn't something that we addressed because, again, the principles for drawing the maps are laid out in the Maryland Constitution, and that's what we used as our primary rules.
So did the LRAC Commission, given the fact that there was a secondary commission that the governor had appointed that was doing work all around the state and working, did anyone in the LRAC Commission ever consider the work of the Citizens Commission?
We did not have, as I recall, much testimony from, we listened to the public. We didn't have much testimony from folks that were advocating for or against the governor's commission's map.
Okay. All right. Well, historic, and I asked you this question earlier, and my question was, historically, who proposed the map for consideration? And given that traditionally the governor prepares the maps and proposes them to the legislature, I guess I was just wondering why the commission felt that they had to have a parallel process at the same time when they didn't even participate in the governor's commission.
I object to the concept that the governor, that any executive should be the one determining the rules for the drawing of legislative maps. And I'm happy to go into it further in debate, but I believe that to be a sincere problem for us. Again, I don't know what happened in the past. I'm here to defend the map we have in front of us today, which was guided by the principles of the Constitution of Maryland, as approved by the voters of Maryland.
No, thank you. And I think
Can
that
we stay on the amendment? And
certainly, what I'm trying to figure out is, traditionally the governor prepares the map and proposes it to the legislature for consideration, and clearly the governor's order was following the Constitution, if anybody read the original governor's order. So clearly the governor had that in his order. The thing that he had in there different than anyone else, again, he had his executive order dated January 12, 2021, asked to prepare a report based on certain things, and they were all adhering to the Constitution. And the other thing that he put in there that is very important to me as the basis of my amendments and my discussion is the understandable principle of one person, one vote through a closer approach than in past maps to population equity among legislative districts. So they had a very transparent process, and in addition to the constitutional requirements, Governor Hogan asked the commission to look at the one person, one vote, and I will get into that a little more. So traditionally, the governors in the state of Maryland have always proposed the maps. And they also this commission was assisted by the experienced consultant, Nathaniel Pursley of Stanford Law School, who's a leading expert on the Voting Rights Act. So,
on your amendment, can you please describe your amendment, please?
yes, sir. Well, here's the problem with the amendment. I'm going to defer to the minority leader, but I'd like to come back because I have some more comments I'd like to make, but I'd like to defer to our problem with the current amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minority leader.
I'll make an effort to do that, and I think as the staff is aware, what this amendment does is it substitutes the Citizen Commission map in its entirety for the LRAC map for SJ2 that is before you in its entirety. And the reason for the confusion, I don't want anyone in this chamber to think that my colleague from Carroll County somehow has made a mistake. She has not. If anyone has made a mistake, it is me. The amendment that is before you was intended to be drafted in my name, and another amendment is intended to be drafted, which will be offered subsequently in the gentle lady from Carroll County's name, and that may be why there is some confusion or exasperation as to the pursuit of the argument. If anyone is to blame for that, blame me, not her. What I would suggest and urge the body today is that the Citizens Commission map is, quite frankly, a better map. It doesn't mean that it's a perfect map, because it is not. And my colleague and friend from Montgomery County that I served on the LRAC with, and Mr. Arrow, who was the chair, said many times throughout these proceedings and different hearings that there's essentially, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm paraphrasing, there's lots of different ways you can draw a map. And that is absolutely correct. I mean, that's just common sense. There's lots of different ways that you can draw a map. But what is inherent in that concept is that there are some ways that are done for particular purposes that may be outside the ambit of what we really should be doing as legislators, and there are some ways that you can do it with a more nuanced, nonpartisan approach. The Citizens Commission, which none of us served on, none of us were directly involved in. I got to be honest with you, I wasn't too thrilled about that initially. Redistricting is inherently a political issue because it affects all of us, and it affects the political playing field upon which all other decisions are made. And so when it was announced that there would be a Citizens Commission that would really, frankly, include very little input or very little guidance from politicians, I, like all of you, an elected official, thought, gee, that kind of hurts my feelings a little bit, that I'm not entrusted to determine where the lines are, that I'm not entrusted to be a participant, a direct participant at least, or a decision maker on those things. But when you think about it more fundamentally, and you take yourself out of the equation, take ourselves out of the equation, it's hard to do. It's hard to do as legislators, it's hard to do as human beings. But if you try, I think you would agree that a nonpartisan process led by people who do not have any skin in the game, it doesn't really matter to the members of the Citizens Commission. And I got to be honest with you, I only know the names of 3 of them, and that's only because they were the chair people who have been publicly identified over and over again. The other 6 members, I couldn't pick them out of a lineup. If they walked into the gallery and introduced themselves, I bet you that none of us would know who they were, probably. And there's a beauty to that, because they don't have any axe to grind. It doesn't matter to them if district whatever crosses into this area or crosses into that area. It doesn't matter to them if a particular delegate from Frederick County is given a great district for her or him to win or not. It doesn't matter to them. They just care about the process and the principles. And when election day comes, wherever the chips may fall, that's where they fall, because they're fairly drawn, nonpartisan districts. There's a beauty to that. And the Citizens Commission map is a better exemplar of that process. I said when we were here last month in the congressional map debate that I was very appreciative that Madam Speaker invited and enabled me to participate on behalf of the minority party in the LRAC process. And I mean that, because I really did appreciate the opportunity to have information and colloquy and dialogue with our colleagues, and the opportunity to have access to the staff and sort of see what was or what could go on as we move through that process. But at the end of the day, the LRAC map is still a function of politicians choosing their voters rather than the citizens coming up with fair and balanced districts without regard to the end game, to the political outcome that may fall. I'll tell you a couple of things that I think maybe you do or don't know about the Citizens Commission map that you may think, wow, that sounds pretty good. My colleague from Carroll County mentioned the name Nathan Persili. So Nathan Persili is a national expert in redistricting. He's a professor at Stanford University in California. He is engaged by Democrats and Republicans from across the nation. I believe he's engaged by the state of Connecticut, who has a very different process than us in how they develop their maps. They bring in sort of these independent experts to create statistical and data-driven models. He works with them. He works with a variety of other entities, just like us, going through this process. And Mr. Persili, or Dr. Persili, probably should call him Dr. Persili, they like that. If you listened or had an opportunity to participate in the Rules Committee hearings, the joint hearing we had with the Senate where he testified about the Citizens Commission map, you would find out, surprisingly, that under the Citizens Commission map, we increase majority-minority districts in the state of Maryland. There will be more districts that are majority African American. There will be more districts that are majority Hispanic than what there is under the LRAC map that you all are likely going to vote for. That seems anomalous. That seems anomalous to suggest that the Citizens Commission map would enhance minority representation and diversity in a state as diverse as our own, rather than the preferred LRAC map. You would find out that the Citizens Commission map has a noticeable differentiation in what we call the population deviation statistics. So I don't know how closely everybody pays attention to this. I'll be bluntly honest with you. When today is over and I don't have to talk about redistricting very much more, I will be blessedly happy, because it is not the most exciting topic in the world, and it's very kind of insider baseball and complicated. But the population deviation statistic suggests, based upon case law from years and years ago, when we didn't use computers quite as much as we do today, that you were to design these districts to the same number of populations. So if you're in a 3-member district and your neighbor in the next county is in a 3-member district, you're supposed to represent the same number of human beings, not voters, people. But we understand that, I think you'll recall, my colleague from Montgomery County was, when we did the congressional debate, talked about how federal law says for congressional districts, you don't get any deviation. You have to be down to one person, which is kind of crazy, which is why when you live in your neighborhoods and you're like, why do I vote for the 5th district and the guy in the house literally right next to me votes for the 4th district? Well, that's because that's where the line was, down to one human being. But for state districts, we don't impose that kind of absolutism. And there's case law that exists, again, from many years ago, when we didn't have the benefits of all of the computer-driven map software that exists today, that says if you have a population deviation of around 5% or less, up or down, then the courts wouldn't say that that was an excessive population deviation. But every court that considers this, and every expert that considers this, says that the goal should be to reduce the population deviations to as close to zero as possible. Why is that? One person, one vote. One person, one vote is a concept that is enshrined in the federal Constitution and in the seminal case of Baker versus Carr. One person, one vote was a Supreme Court decision to help minority communities get adequate representation, to prevent a situation where certain communities were overloaded with voters and only got one representative, for example, and other communities were underloaded and got the same number of representation. That's wrong. It's a simple, logical concept. You don't need to go to law school to figure that out. It's wrong. And so the goal should be to reduce the population deviation to as close as possible to zero. I think you know where I'm going with this. From any statistical analysis, the Citizens Commission map reduces the population deviations much more significantly than what the LRAC map does. The LRAC map has about a 4% maximum deviation. It has an average deviation of about 2.7%. The Citizens Commission map, 1.4% average deviation and no deviations at 3 or above. So it's done a better job of taking all of the people who live in this state and placing them in districts that are fair, that are equal. We talk a lot about equity and equality. It applies to everyone in every situation. I would also suggest to you that the Citizens Commission maps wholly eliminates, the amendment that's before you, wholly eliminates the 2 and the 1 districts. I don't know, some of us in this room, we serve in 2 and 1 districts. Some of you are the 2, some of you are the 1. I think you all understand why that is. I think you understand, for the most part, under your current map, why is my district divided into a 2 and a 1? There's a political purpose to that. There's a political purpose to that. It's a situation, 9 times out of 10, where it helps to elect a particular individual in a particular community. If you put them all in a 3-member district, which my colleague has said is the general standard, which we can talk about, it's highly unlikely that that person in the 1-member district would win. If you put them all in single-member districts, you'd be splitting the 2-person, and it's highly unlikely that one of them would win. So we rig the game. We rig the game. Just be honest about it. I don't know how many of you remember playing games with your children when they were little. My son's 5 years old, and he loves to play checkers. And when I started playing checkers with him, it took him a little while to really figure out, how to make the moves. Checkers is a pretty simple game, but he's only 5. And I have now taken, he loves it so much to win that I rig the game for him so that he can win. I make stupid, silly moves. I enable him to win because it makes him so happy, and because I hope that fulfills him with some confidence. It's one thing to rig the game for a little child. It's another thing to rig the game with people's votes. And I'll be honest with you. To my Democratic friends and colleagues, and I mean this, my friends and colleagues, you don't need to rig the game to win here in the state of Maryland. You don't need to rig the game. You're going to win. You're going to be the majority party based upon the census data and the political trajectories of this state. You don't need to rig the game to win. The Citizens Commission maps are fair, they are balanced, they have a wide variety of commonly accepted legal principles in them. They reflect communities of interest, they reflect compactness. My friend from Montgomery County has said, communities of interest, and I think he's right, it's not the primary factor. It can be a factor to consider what the history of the legislative districts are. But simply because somebody 20 years ago, when 98% of us were not here, made up a map that connected point A to 45 miles away point B and said, well, that's a legislative district now. That doesn't magically transform point A and point B into communities of interest. They're not communities of interest. I can give you an example from the congressional world. I live right outside of Cumberland, Maryland. My congressional district goes to Potomac, Maryland. I would love to be a community of interest with Potomac, Maryland. For those of you who represent it, it's a very nice place. You know that. It's one of the most successful areas of the state of Maryland. I would love for that to be a community of interest. I would love to have the assets, the resources, the things that they have. That is not a community of interest with Cumberland, Maryland. Not even close. And so simply because we've served together or we've been placed together in legislative districts for a period of time doesn't create some sprinkling of magic dust that says that has to be enshrined forever. The Governor's Commission map, the Citizens Commission map, didn't take into account these things. It didn't say it's my job, their job, to protect the 141 of us. Didn't say that. And you know what? For some of us in the minority party, that's not really going to work out. There are people, I'm sure, from the minority party today who are going to vote for this map, knowing full well that if this map is actually implemented, likely by the courts, that it is going to jeopardize their political future because of the lines on that map. And they're going to vote for it anyway because it's the right thing to do for Marylanders and for the future. I don't know how many of you in this room are going to be here in 2034. I most definitely am not. But 2034 will be the next time after this year where these lines will change. The votes you take today are going to influence your communities and people who come after you in these seats and who try to provide a public service to your communities for more than a decade. It's not just about you, and what you like, and how easy it is for you, or pick the easiest path to get you elected. It's supposed to be about more than that. And I encourage you to consider that in this amendment and the good faith spirit in which it's offered, and potentially adopt the Citizens Commission maps.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We heard our colleague's eloquent dissertation. He's a big city attorney. We hear him speak all the time. He's phenomenal at what he does. His dress doesn't often represent his eloquency. He is very good at what he does. I appreciate what he said today. I have a few issues. We talked about the minority representation, and God knows I love it when white people tell me what's best for me. It's always fun to hear. You know, especially as the first Southern Maryland ever elected in the first state official ever elected in the history of Southern Maryland. One thing I know is we can be elected anywhere. I'm sure a good delegate from Hagerstown can surely attest to that. Because see, this wasn't the Black Caucus map that we're talking about. The LRAC map was the map for the legislative map, because I don't just represent African Americans. I represent Asians, Spanish, Pacific Islanders, even white folks. And I have a duty to all of them. You see, what my good delegate was talking about is he leaves out the fact that one of the most important things when we developed our map was continuity of service, relationships. See, we elected these individuals, they elected us. They're familiar with what we provide. There's a process. We pretend that somehow there's not a political process in each of our districts. There's not on a local level and on a state level. This isn't just about race. Again, it drives me crazy when I'm told what's best for me. I know what's best for me. I do it every day. I appreciate them minimizing it by saying, well, you know, we've given you guys a few more districts. I don't want the crumbs. I want the whole cake. I don't need to be in a minority district to win. I just need a voice. This map gives us all that voice. We cannot ignore the fact that this is a legally sufficient map. We talked about 2002 like it was the Vietnam era. We actually had computers back then. We actually had such statisticians back then. And case law is relevant. And discussing it as in, well, that was 20 years ago, it means nothing. That's not how this works, and that's not how our courts work. This is a legally sufficient map. Hold on, it's peanut galleries talking. What? Again, this is a legally sufficient map. It represents my people well. The goal is not to diminish the minority voice. This map does not do that. It allows our voice, it allows us to speak, it allows us to pop up in places you didn't think we'd be. So I do disagree with the connotation that maybe this map isn't fair to us. It's more than fair to us, and it was made by us. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Recognizing gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you. I just wanted to finish up with some of my issues. I will tell you that my amendment that we were supposed to get drawn was supposed to be an amendment that took the Senate districts as proposed by the Citizens Commission and then made every single legislative district into 3 single-member districts. Unfortunately, this amendment now in front of you replaces it with the LRAC map, which, I'm sorry, not the Citizens Commission map, which moves greatly in that direction of having more single-member districts, and it also has a rationale for why they've kept some of their 3-member districts. So we talked about the governor and the Constitution and what the commissions did. The governor's group followed the Constitution. They were his instructions, but he also instructed them to look at one person, one vote and single-member districts. So if you read their report, it basically, and you talk about legally sufficient, and I'm going to argue that these maps, and maps for years in Maryland, have not been legally sufficient because different people get different numbers of votes. Some get 3, some get 2, and some get 1. And I don't believe that's fair. Forget the politics of it, just the fairness of it. In the report from the commission, and by the way, I want to tell you, I read the commission report. It is excellent. I followed the Citizens Commission work that they did. It was all transparent. I listened to it online. I submitted testimony. They issued a report. They did everything in full view of everyone else that could see their deliberations, hear them talking about what they were doing. They issued a report stating what they did. So in the report, they talk about single versus multi-member districts. Maryland is unusual among states in having retained excessive use of multi-member districts in the House of Delegates. 3 delegate districts nest within each Senate district, meaning the arrangement can be that of a single district electing 3 delegates, 3 districts electing 1 delegate each, or a combination of 2 and 1. Past deployment of these options has been criticized as lacking in any obvious or principled basis, and I think we all would agree that that is true. In the current legislature, there are 31 multi-member districts with 3 delegates, 12 2-member districts, and 24 single-member districts. Anyone in this body can explain to me how the last redistricting came up with that. I don't think anyone could do that. The Governor Hogan's executive order provided that legislative districts shall be, to the extent possible, which it's possible, it's proven it can be done, consistent with the Commission's other duties and responsibilities, subdivided into single-member districts. It's clear that in certain particular situations, the use of single-member districts might be indicated to assure compliance with the Voting Rights Act. And I'm going to tell you, there are lots of minority groups. I know some people keep talking about the Black Caucus. There are lots of different types of minority groups. It's not just the Black Caucus. I'm not going to sit and name them, but there are many minority groups that are not represented well in this chamber, and I think that everyone should have a chance to be able to participate. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, Maryland and New Hampshire are the only states left with districts that can be single, double, or 3 members. And New Hampshire has a very good reason of how they do it because of their towns. Maryland, as I said, is very random. Every other state in the nation has adopted all single-member or 2-member districts. Every voter has the same number of votes. You either have 1 or you have 2. There are 8 2-member districts, all 2-member districts in certain states, but the rest of the states, all single-member districts. They all have the same number of votes. 1 person, 1 vote. The Supreme Court adopted the 1 person, 1 vote rule in 1964 in Reynolds versus Sims. Chief Justice Earl Warren said that as long as we have a representative form of government, it is not fair or equal to permit some votes to count for more than others. The rule based on the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment is applied to state elections, including for state legislators, county boards, city council, or local school boards. The Equal Protection Clause of the Maryland Constitution gives voters the same protection. Congressional districts are required by law to be single-member districts with equal population, as has already been discussed, down to the person. The Voting Rights Act, Section 2, and the 14th Amendment to the Constitution also state that. This applies to legislative districts, too. I'm going to say it once again. We're the only state in the nation left with this hodgepodge of undefendable, why it's been done, different types of application of these multi-member districts. 50 years of voting rights legislation have determined that single-member voting districts are better for all racial minorities and maybe political parties. I don't know. It just makes more competition, local elections. Many years ago, multi-member districts were all the fad, used to keep minorities out of office. I submitted testimony during the Citizens Commission, the Governor's Commission, during that very open process. I submitted a very long explanation with lots of case law behind it. And here's why I particularly, being from Carroll County, support single-member House districts contained, to the extent possible, compactly in a single county. After the last redistricting in 2010, my compact community of Eldersburg was unfairly split down the middle, and half of it was put into a large 3-member district that extends 55 miles north to the Pennsylvania line, and the southern half of the district was attached to a 2-member legislative district, District 9A, that consisted mostly of Howard County residents. All of the elected officials in District 9 reside in Howard County. My former constituents had no idea who represented them because it was complicated for them to understand this. And their representatives have the challenges of serving the needs of 2 distinctly different counties. And I'll give you credit for the map that has been created, both the LRAC map and the Citizens Commission map. It clearly has made improvements upon cross-county boundaries, so I give you credit for that. In 2010, Carroll County had the population to support 4 resident delegate districts, wholly located in Carroll County, but instead it was apportioned outside of the boundaries. Needless to say, county splits and district lines make it hard to achieve strong ties between a county and its delegation. Nationwide, as I said, the use of multi-member districts has declined over the last several decades because they have been found to be discriminatory. Single-member districts support the basis of one person, one vote. The conception of political equity from the Declaration of Independence to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address to the 14th, 15th, 17th, 19th Amendments can mean only one thing: one person, one vote. Gray versus Sanders, federal court. In Reynolds versus Sims, the Supreme Court announced a landmark decision that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment protects the right of all qualified voters to vote in state elections and have their votes counted. One man's vote is to be worth as much as another's, not 2 times or 3 times as much. How can we defend Maryland's current multi-member system of some voters having 3, some having 2, and some having 1 as equal, even within the same county? As I described, my current county now has, some people have 3, some people have 1, in the new map that you guys have, that's in front of us today, the LRAC map. The court specifically addressed multi-member districts in Whitcomb versus Chavez in 1971 and said the multi-member districts cannot unconstitutionally operate to dilute or cancel the voting strength of racial or political elements. I don't think it's defensible in the LRAC map based on that. And as I mentioned, we're one of only 2 remaining states that will have these districts that have different numbers of size of multi-member district. In Maryland, again, some people have 1, some people have 2, and some people have 3, and again, for undisclosed reasons. At least in the LRAC map, they explain why they ended up having some 3-member, not the LRAC map, the Citizens Commission map, why they ended up having some 3-member districts, because some of the public wanted it in certain of the big counties. Single-member districts will help create better government in Maryland. How is that? I know we're all used to, listen, I'm in a 3-member district now. Going to election next year is going to be a cakewalk, because guess what? We all slate up, we all work together, we get reelected. It's incumbent protection. Hey, I'm working against my own best interests because the map that you have in front of me changes that, and I won't be in a slate with my buddies to run again. But it's not about making it easier for you and me to run for office. It's about competition every 4 years that we can defend our votes, that we do down here and our work down here, and if we do a good job, we'll be reelected. So, all single-member districts, how do they create a better Maryland? It will allow delegates to better represent their constituents and provide constituent service. You'll have a smaller group of people, 1/3 of the people, you're in charge, you take care of them. If you don't do a good job, they'll vote you out. It will allow constituents to hold their delegates accountable. It will maximize voter input. You can go to your community associations and be there and debate more locally. It more accurately represents a composition of the state's population, and it makes it easier for grassroots candidates to challenge sleepy incumbents, and there are sleepy incumbents currently running on a multi-member slate. Of course, not in this body. It will also upend the past usage of single-member districts and dual-member districts to protect particular incumbents. Multi-member districts dilute the voting power of minority groups, fix the vote dilution currently in place, and canceling the voting strength of racial or political elements. It also decreased the cost of campaigning. We talk about that frequently, thus making involvement in the local political process more accessible. The House of Delegates is the people's house. Looking to our federal counterpart, the House of Representatives, congressmen and congresswomen are elected from single-member districts. This is a system with which most voters are familiar and should be emulated at the state level. It's done all over at the local level in our counties. If a voter supports or disfavors a particular delegate in a 3-member district, how will they cast their vote to make the biggest impact when there are 6 on the ballot? It can be quite confusing and troubling for a voter in a multi-member district to go to the voting booth. And it also creates smaller local delegate districts, allowing us to be more accessible. So there are so many values to the benefits of establishing uniform standards for using 3 single-member districts in every single legislative district. That is why I support this. I know it's a change for all of us that we're going to have to get used to, and change is tough. But hey, after this next election, everyone will be in the same boat, and you'll say, hey, why didn't we do this sooner? So once again, I am here to support the concept. As Governor Hogan did the same thing of one person, one vote. And you're going to have someone stand up and say, oh, our Constitution allows for that. Well, all of you know in the past that sometimes our Constitution isn't always right, and we need to fix it. And you're going to say, well, why didn't we fix it? Well, I will tell you that I think we have had bills in front of this legislature in the past to do just that have not succeeded. So again, I move my amendment. These are some of the arguments for my amendment and for the single-member district. I wanted to get it on the record, and I wanted just to have the body consider every 10 years, and as they said, for 3 more elections, so it's really 12 years, this is what we're going to be dealing with, and I think this is the better route forward for all of our constituents. So thank you very much.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to ask the members of this body, all the members of this body, to reject this amendment. And I'm not going to ask that on the basis of any quibbling about the details of a map. And I'm not going to ask it by casting any doubt on the intent of the governor's appointees to the Citizens Redistricting Committee. In fact, I have a lot of respect for them. I think they're patriots. I think they were doing what they saw as their duty and did the best they could. I'm going to talk about something more fundamental to what we do here. 2 concepts that are so basic to our system of government that we teach them to children in kindergarten. And that is the separation of powers and the concept of popular sovereignty, that the people make decisions about our fundamental law as enshrined in the Constitution of the state of Maryland. Now, I hope you were listening to the debate on this floor. I hope you heard 2 terms. They stood out to me. We heard repeated reference to the governor's commission and the governor's map, and we heard the phrase, the governor instructed. The governor instructed the commission on the rules that they had to follow in drawing their maps. Most importantly, that they had to ignore all of the current maps and start from scratch. And in fact, members of the Citizens Redistricting Commission in the Rules Committee hearing said that they followed that. Here's the problem with that. Our very system of government is founded on the idea that the legislative branch is independent from the executive. It's founded on the idea that the legislative branch should not be unduly influenced by the executive. It's why we fought a revolution. And for hundreds of years now, we have abided by the concept that our basic constitutional principles are not up to a judge, they're not up to a legislator, they're not up to an executive. The people of Maryland, voting at the ballot, are the only people that can change the basic rules of our Constitution. And the governor, for whatever reason, and I don't question his intent here, but what the governor did is he set new rules, extra constitutional rules, rules that have not been approved by the voters of Maryland, rules that were developed, as far as I know, behind closed doors, and then issued to this commission, rules that they were instructed to follow by executive order, by fiat, by royal decree. It is not the right of any executive to determine the rules for drawing the districts in the state of Maryland. It is not the right of any executive, Democrat or Republican, to change the rules in our Constitution that have been approved by the voters of Maryland over the generations. And frankly, I'm deeply concerned at the idea that this legislature should bow in obeisance to any executive. We have sworn an oath to the people of the state of Maryland and the Constitution of the state of Maryland. And that Constitution is what we owe our allegiance to. I would encourage the members to stand up for the right of our legislature, a right which has been protected by legislators in the state of Maryland for generations, to be an independent branch of government, and to adopt the map that was drawn based not on an executive order, but on the rules enshrined in our Constitution by the people of Maryland. I urge the body to reject this amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority.
As I think you all know, have a tremendous amount of respect for my friend who just spoke, the majority leader. We are friends. I won't apologize for that. I don't know why I would have to. We work together as much as what we can on everything when we can. But I don't know about that last characterization that somehow that the governor has no role in this process and that it is up to us and that the governor can't convene a commission of his or her decision-making to present the map, because I'm just going to read to you. Maryland State Constitution, Article 3, Section 5. Following each decennial census of the United States and after public hearings. We had a decennial census in 2020. The governor convened a series of public hearings. The governor, not the legislature, not the House Speaker, not the Senate President, the governor, whoever he or she may be, shall prepare a plan setting forth the boundaries of the legislative districts for electing of the members of the Senate and the House of Delegates. The governor, not the Senate President, not the House Speaker, the governor shall present the plan to the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Delegates, who shall introduce the governor's plan as a joint resolution to the General Assembly. What has occurred here is different than what has ever occurred in our recent political memory, because it is the very first time in our recent political memory that the governor of the state of Maryland, when it came time to draw the districts, was not a member of the Democratic Party. That is the only difference. That is the only difference. Is that when we're all on the same team, we don't have to go through this process. We just all meet together and we're all on the same team. That's what we're going to do. I didn't serve here under Governor O'Malley. I did read excerpts of his deposition in the Benesek versus Lamone lawsuit. And if you read those excerpts, you'll very quickly conclude that in the last redistricting process, the governor of the state of Maryland put a very thick thumb upon the scales of what the maps are going to look like. And he basically admitted to that under oath in deposition. So I do think that the governor, whoever he or she may be, Republican, Democrat, doesn't really matter. The governor has a role in this process. And what the governor has done with his commission, I respect that we want to keep our legislative prerogatives, but what the governor has done with his commission is fair, it's necessary, and it's within the actual specific wording of the Maryland Constitution. And that's the map and the plan that is before us today. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the minority leader bringing up the Constitution. You know, in the minority party, we have to read the bills closely, and we obviously read the Constitution. So I'm grateful that you clarified that. You had mentioned a better map. There were a couple points specifically in the last 45 minutes of discussion that really stuck out with me. A better map. You also referenced majority-minority districts. With this amendment, why would that be a better amendment than the LRAC map? Specifically, what about majority-minority districts in this amendment is better than the LRAC map?
Well, I wouldn't intend, and I respect my friend from Southern Maryland and his comments. I'm not a member of a racial or ethnic minority, and I don't intend to suggest that my words speak for all of their concerns. I wouldn't ever deem to do that. But data is data. Data is absolute. And so what the data suggests when you take a look at the census statistics is that under the Citizens Commission map, the amendment before you, there would be 43 majority African American seats in this state. And if you adopt the LRAC map, you reject this amendment, adopt the LRAC map, there would only be 36. So there's a difference of 7 majority African American districts. And I respect what my friend said. I think people can win everywhere. I'm going to work very, very hard in the city of Hagerstown this year for my friend who will be the first, who is the first African American elected member of the legislature or appointed member of the legislature from Hagerstown, Maryland, a place that's very close to me that I know a lot about. I think she can win. I think many of you can win anywhere. Exactly what my friend from Southern Maryland said. But I do think that when we talk about the Voting Rights Act, I do think when we talk about other issues, there's a tremendous amount of concern put on how the data leads out to produce a more diverse outcome. And so, as I said, 43 under the Citizens Commission map, majority African American districts, 36 under LRAC. You want to talk majority Hispanic American? There are 4 majority Hispanic American seats under the Citizens Commission map under this amendment. There is only 1 under the LRAC map. Okay. And so it's just uncontroverted that from a statistical basis, the Citizens Commission maps produces a higher probability or higher reality of majority-minority districts, which is the touchstone for the Voting Rights Act.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the amendment that we have before us is a map that has more majority-minority districts. And the reason I bring that up is my good friend from Charles County mentioned diminishing the minority vote. And it's clear that this amendment would actually, in my opinion, increase the minority voice for Marylanders, which I think is a good thing, an objectively good thing. The second point, and my last point, deals with the separation of powers. Now, I was not a member of the LRAC Commission. I was not asked to participate. The chairman of the LRAC Commission is a constituent of mine. He's in my district. And I have never spoken with that individual once about this redistricting process. Think about that. The chairman of the LRAC Commission is my constituent in my district, and he's never once reached out to me to ask about what I think about the district lines. That is the separation of powers. The Citizens Commission was put together to separate the politicians from the citizens, and that's exactly what it did. So there is a separation of power with that respect. And for that reason, I'll be supporting this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentlelady from Baltimore and Hartford.
Thank you, Madam
County.
Speaker. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to hear this debate about the Constitution. I'd like you to know I've gotten a copy of the Maryland Constitution for each and every one of you. It is in the lounge in a box. I hope you pick it up. I hope you read it, and I hope you keep it in your desk. Then you can see exactly what the minority leader was talking about. In section 5, page 26, this has both Maryland and U.S. Constitution, and you can see how short it is, where it will tell you directly the governor shall prepare a plan. And in section 4, where it talks about each legislative district shall consist of adjoining territory, be compact in form, and of substantially equal population. Due regard shall be given to natural boundaries and the boundaries of political subdivisions. Right there, that's what it says. This amendment you have follows the Constitution that the majority leader spoke so highly of and that we all swear allegiance to. I would like to point out that in 1972, the redistricting plan was found unconstitutional. In 84 and 93, the court cautioned the General Assembly on their plans. In 2002, the court overturned the map. A special master was appointed to redraw the maps because of the time constraints. I think we're in the same posture if you don't pass this amendment, if you go forward with the map drawn by politicians for politicians. We will see it in court, and I believe it will be overturned. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had a lot of talking points here today, and so much has been already covered, so I will not repeat, and done quite eloquently, and I appreciate all of my colleagues. A few things that really have bothered me throughout this entire process, throughout this entire year, is the process. I was very pleased when I heard that Governor Hogan was going to reach out to the citizens. And this is the word that I think is most important that we need to keep thinking about: the citizens of this state. Not only was it a bipartisan commission, but he reached out to the general public and invited them to submit their resumes, to ask to be a part of this process. Regular citizens, not politicians, not members of the governor's staff, just regular citizens. And I think that is very powerful. There are 14 states that have commissions that do their redistricting. Only 9 of them are nonpartisan. And so while I'm scrapping most of what I had written down to speak about, something that struck me while listening to this debate were the faces of my children. So I'm going to speak to you as fellow parents. And what I have found probably over the last 6-7 years is the younger generation has become so jaded and cynical over the process of political arguments, one side versus the other, without listening to the citizens. I ask young people routinely, how do you feel about politicians today? They don't like us very much, and for usually a lot of very good reasons. This is an opportunity to throw the partisanship out the door and to be able to go home to our families, our voters, our citizens, and look them in the eye and say, we respected an open, transparent process. I would certainly hope that that is something that every person, all of my colleagues, all of my friends here, would think about when they go home to their families and be proud of a product that put the citizens first. So thank you, and I hope that you will support this amendment.
Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from
I'm
Calvert.
back. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking of Calvert, Calvert County is a unique county because the county is a peninsula. It's a beautiful county, if you've been. On the one side of Calvert County is the mighty Chesapeake Bay, and on the other side is the beautiful Patuxent River. And the county ends at Solomon's Island, which is just a drop-dead gorgeous town. What's interesting about this county is we have 92,000 people in the county. I think it's 92,500. And there is no reason why Calvert County can't have 2 members of the House of Delegates within the county proper. There's no reason. Yet that hasn't happened in decades. And we're even doing it with this particular bill. Not this amendment. This amendment corrects that, which is why I support the amendment. But with this particular bill, it once again violates the natural boundaries of the Chesapeake Bay and the Patuxent River of a peninsula county. A blatant violation of Maryland's Constitution, which says, Article 3, Section 4, each legislative district shall consist of adjoining territory, be compact in form, and of substantially equal population. Due regard shall be given to natural boundaries and boundaries of political subdivisions. Calvert County, Madam Speaker, is a peninsula county that has on the one side of it the Chesapeake Bay and on the other the Patuxent River. If there ever were a natural boundary, those would be natural boundaries, geographic barriers. And yet, this bill, SJ2, completely violates the Maryland Constitution, Article 3, Section 4, as it relates to boundaries and respecting adjoining territory and natural boundaries. Here's proof. I have an assistant today, Madam Speaker, Vanna White. She's going to pick up this. That's the other way, yep. So, folks, this is the peninsula that is Calvert County. Here's the Patuxent River, and this is the Chesapeake Bay. Down here is Solomon's Island. This is the county line, adjoining with Anne Arundel County. Here's District 27B in Calvert County, and you have to cross the Patuxent River to get to rest of the yellow in Prince George's County for District 27B. There is no bridge on the Patuxent River in that district, not even close. In fact, in order for the people in this part of Calvert County to get to the other side of the district in Prince George's County, they'd have to drive between 35 and 40 minutes to get to a bridge to get to that district, the rest of it. That violates Article 3, Section 4 of the Maryland Constitution, which says, due regard shall be given to natural boundaries and the boundaries of political subdivisions. This county, Calvert, only has 92,000 people. There's no reason we can't have 2 full districts, House of Members districts in it. But wait, there's more. Then there's District 27A, which is in Charles County, because it's part of District 27. And here's the Charles County, Prince George's County line, and the rest of it is in Prince George's County. Barely contiguous, and arguably probably not. Intentionally, District 27, A, B, C, its purpose is to completely violate Section 4, Article 3 of the Maryland Constitution. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I rise to support this amendment from the good delegate of Carroll County, because Calvert County and the people of Calvert County deserve to be represented with 2 full legislative districts in this peninsula county where there are natural boundaries, on the one side, the mighty Chesapeake Bay, and on the other, the Patuxent River. And I must remind you that District 27B has no bridge over the Patuxent River. Again, I said that. I want to put this on the record. It takes a 35 to 40-minute drive to get to the other side because you have to go all the way down to the Benedict Bridge or all the way up to Upper Marlboro, cross over, and then come back down. So you're going outside of a district to get back into the district. This is a violation of Article 3, Section 4 of the Maryland Constitution. If there ever were one, Calvert County would be the best example because it is a peninsula county surrounded by natural geographic boundaries of water. And for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, I rise to support this amendment. Thank you.
Madam
Gentleman from
Speaker.
Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a brief question for the maker of the amendment, please.
Gentlelady Yield.
Good morning. So there was a lot of debate about the maps when they were being drawn both by the Citizens Commission and the LRAC, and I just want to be crystal clear because we've shared a lot of ideas this morning. So this is the big interest of southeastern Baltimore County was to keep the peninsulas of Essex and Dundalk together generally. And I just want to be clear on what we're voting on. This is the final Citizens Commission map that they had proposed. Is that?
Yes, this is the final Citizens Commission map that they proposed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Speaker. Just very quickly, I'm rising in support of the amendment. On the Eastern Shore, we have something called multi-county, multi-member districts, and y'all are going to hear about more of that later. I'm not up in arms happy about the map that's before us right now as the amendment. We've got a problem with that map. It's a good thing in that we've got some single-member districts on the Eastern Shore. Caroline County in this map is divided 3 ways. We've got areas of the state of Maryland that can't get a resident elected into the state legislature. Imagine if Baltimore City couldn't have a representative in the state legislature. You all would be, this place would be up in arms about that. This is an entire county that's getting left out. And this map is better than the map that's been proposed in SJ2. In our multi-county, multi-member districts, you saw the map the delegate just raised with the mighty Patuxent River dividing the district. In our district, we don't need a river. It takes an hour and a half to get from one end of the district to the other. Okay? How is a constituent who lives 4 counties away supposed to call their delegate when they've got a problem because they can't get their unemployment benefits? How are they supposed to get the representation they need? Imagine in Prince George's County, if your delegate, you couldn't reach your delegate. The areas of the state of Maryland that have population have representation. This is a really important issue for the Eastern Shore. We hear it all the time. I'm reluctantly supporting this. As I said, we've got a county on the shore by this map. The way it's divided, they're probably not going to get a delegate. That's unconscionable. But it is what it is. I hope everybody votes for this. I'm going to support the amendment, and you'll hear more about the multi-county, multi-member districts later. Thank you.
On the amendment, the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Any additional amendments or to the bill or to its title? Clerk will call the roll. The amendment fails. Is there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered to pass to third reading. Message from the Senate. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the bills and committee assignments.
Senate Bill 191, Chair, Senate Finance Committee, Ways and Means. Senate Bill 219, Chair, Senate Finance Committee, Economic Matters. By order, Sylvia Seeger, Chief Clerk.
Letters of reassignment. The clerk will read the letter.
House Bill 369, reassigned to Judiciary.
Hearing no objections, the letters have been read and ordered journalized. That ends the work at the desk. Committee announcements. Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That committee will begin briefings, hearings at 4 p.m. today. Yes, 4 p.m. today. The website has been updated so the public knows. Thank you.
Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House Judiciary Committee will meet for bill hearings at 1 p.m. today.
Environment Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Environment and Transportation Committee will have its regularly scheduled public hearing at 1 p.m. If we are required to come back because of floor work, we will just have to listen to announcements.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will meet for bill hearings today at 1 p.m. Our briefing has been rescheduled, so please check the Maryland General Assembly website. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Economic Matters will have bill hearings at 1 p.m., 2 brief bill hearings at 1 p.m., so please eat your lunch first. Thank you.
Okay. Rules.
We're not meeting today.
Appropriations.
The full committee will not be meeting today. Listen for subcommittee announcements.
Caucus announcements, recognizing the Republican caucus chair. Good. Republican caucus chair? No meeting, okay. Democratic caucus chair?
No meeting, Madam Chair.
Okay. Recognizing the majority leader?
Madam Speaker, I believe the majority whip had an announcement first.
Recognize majority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In keeping up with our House rules as well as our parliamentarian, in your desk you will find the 2022 rule books in your desk. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Recognize the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I want to repeat and clarify something I said yesterday on the floor, members. Again, all bills need to be in the clerk's office by 5 p.m. on Thursday, February 10th. There has been some confusion. The correct date for submission of bills before they're sent to rules is February 10th. So you have a few extra days. Congratulations.
Okay. Quorum call before adjournment.
Madam Speaker.
There are 136 members present. Clerk will take the call. 137 members present. House is still in session. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand adjourned until Thursday, January 27th at 2 p.m., Legislative Day, January 22nd, for a regular session.
See you at 2 p.m.